check this thing, boy, it's all screwed up.
No, we.
Checkity check, check. Check, check.
Switch the mic.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
I fixed it all by myself.
Oh, did you all by your
Yeah.
own?
Yeah, still, he supervised me, but I did. I said,
You took care of it.
How come these are white instead of,
I don't know. No, I
oh, I see there's a yellow one.
may have run out of paper.
Switch these up sometimes. You play, it's like,
I don't know everything.
you play, it's like crazy. Crazy.
We on, Jeff?
You are.
You're not just in that seat.
Well, I did because I might want to have a sidebar conversation.
Well, yeah, she's, I have to get closer.
I might say,
Whatever.
well, I might be saying,
Okay.
Yeah, right, okay.
But Frank Condo, even that, you know, Frank on the limit at one time, everyone, at least at one time, no more than 10 minutes, you can come back to yourself, no more than, so if you're trying to make a reasoned argument, sometimes it's like, and of all people, is this recording right now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
But when you ever remember Frank at city council meetings, you know, they were all just wax poetic for 40 minutes at a time. All those meetings back then. People were crazy.
okay, we're ready to begin. Please show for the record that board member or, yeah, okay, it is. Hello, hello, okay. Please show for the record that Board Member Noble, Secretary Noble is not here, and President Price is not here. Okay, so call to order. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance and the salute to the New Mexico flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y la república que representa una nación de bajo Dios, indivisible, con justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of Mexico, to see a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Saludos a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de México, símbolo siempre de nuestra
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second, but I just want to look at it first.
Okay.
Have there been any changes at all since,
Yes, no changes, but I wanted to ask the indulgence of the board. Mr. Grendler will be filling in for me, but after the third bullet on superintendent's announcements and superintendent's update, do you mind waiting till I get back, please? That you can continue with the agenda, but will you postpone those items?
oh, not do superintendent's announcements until you return?
With the exception of the first of the introduction of the Gonzalez Community School Choir.
And that's
the
because you're going over to the
travel.
city thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
you.
So just put that off till you get back. Got
That's-
it.
I'm requesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any problems with the rest of the board?
No.
No, okay. And any other
You
changes
sure?
we need?
Because we give her an inch, she takes a mile.
Yeah. Any other changes we need to the agenda?
No, we're good.
Okay, all in favor?
Oh, I didn't second. Second.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's, no one is opposed. Okay, so let's go into executive session. Since Secretary Noble isn't here, I'll take us into executive session. Pursuant to Sections 10-15-1H, 2, 7, and 8 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act, I move to convene into executive session to discuss the following matters: threatened or pending litigation, MNSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H7. B, discussion of the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property, NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H8. And C, limited personnel matters, NMSA 1978, Section 10-15-1H2, the review process for the superintendent's evaluation and the review of the superintendent's contract. Can we take a roll call? Board Member Carrillo?
Yeah.
Board Member Garcia?
Yes.
And the Vice President votes yes. Okay, so we're in executive session.
I just think you like to do this now, you're like, more than I do.
What about? Got Mayor State of the City.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You guys are set. I'll be monitoring.
Who do you
back
have
there.
to do this, do you?
Me? Oh.
Hi, Lori, I'm sorry, I walked right up the street. Come on, did you guys have a good time at Scottsdale the other night? You have a good time at Scottsdale last week? Oh. That's right, we were things tonight.
Okay. I'm good. All right.
Oh, okay, so the front row. Yeah, so you don't have like the microphone for it.
We go up.
Okay, so we have an electricity thing right here. Oh, good. Okay.
Face that way or this way?
Facing this way. Yeah, the camera, you want to go towards the camera. Oh.
You guys are good?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, I realize you were over back. Hi. Very good.
I got both nice and double sides from our accountant.
Okay.
I used to email them the one that has their, and
So you
so they
email?
already have it. Yeah, I emailed it to Nicole.
Okay, can you just print it off of that? Off of that email?
Okay.
When you sent that thing? And then just because last year there was confusion. When I went to leave, they said, well, who's paying? And I was the last one, right? And so I'm sitting there, we let out, right?
And he said, go wash the dishes.
After enjoying a couple of beverages, and they're telling me, hey, you have to pay for all this. So I'm thinking, well, I'll pay, you know, how much was it, you know? And all of this stuff, all these hors d'oeuvres, this big old party, and I'm thinking, well, I guess I can. I don't make that much money, hopefully I can get reimbursed.
Are you keeping me going?
No, I'm not joking with you, this happened last year, that's why I thought this got me that deal on me. In case they,
So remember I was doing the machine, there's not even a, Nicholas, the one that we got, but today is Nicole.
if I could just have it, just so that when they come up to me and they hand me a bill, I think they'd be like, hold on, this is year two, you trying to pay for all this. Business there, and then get ready to be good.
There's a row of seats right there, take the front row and have a seat, please. This one right here. Got what? Team court? Good times. All right. Okay. So, this is where you're going to sit until we call us up to sing. And then we'll sing right here. You will be facing behind you or cameras. Please hold. Well, it's just cameras, working these are right up in this podium because people like to share them with people and also because sometimes people like to go over them and do what is said is really important things. And so,
We actually have a, communication community college.
Really?
Also, we were there live from the registration. One I'm sure they'll look at. And I'm sure there's no one.
we have got to get the local stations. We're still heading to Los Angeles, driving through our Airbnb.
Oh, wow.
So we're not getting local stations at all.
We wouldn't do that.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, that's what a big fight, like, especially like that, those streams. That's what you have to do, alternative, and trying to figure out how to switch from music to, 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 to,
How did you even notice that?
All right, let's see. Okay. So.
Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
In this room, you can actually just switch, just start off in your second spot. So there's okay. Now, I will make your those word and then you guys usually here too. Okay. Eric, here. And
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
budget was that many districts. Just switched to as bad as we are. How would you like to work in Oklahoma?
Well,
That sucks.
I would never live in Oklahoma. It's the most conservative state next to, I don't know, it's kind of like living in Florida.
Not raising 10 years, starting salary at 6. Because the 40-week on sale, they have to put in the sale all the time. They talk about that in here. Just like a bird.
Yeah, more time to do paperwork.
Hey, OD. Okay, we're gonna sit down. I think we should. Maybe we should. Try to get gathered.
Good, how are you? Okay. All my hand in your hands. Thank you. Just wanted to show you the fourth form, maybe that was done in pencil. Oh, it was the fourth in the packet, so I need this data to show you. Okay, she can't see the first thing. You got the 30 other ones, right, from last time? Yeah. Okay, let me see. I have a copy here. I think of the original, so I'll go do that one. Okay. Let me know if you need help with the copier. No, I'll just give you this one. Is that your only copy? Oh, yeah. Okay, you want me to make a copy? I've lost so many at this point that I don't know what to do about it. Oh, no, this isn't the other copy. Oh, it's Mary Beth Brady. Can you read that? I can write it in there. Or I can get you another copy from Walmart. Yeah, just wrote it special. Thank you. Better than us, like, filling it out. Thanks. Well, I can read it here. It says Mary Beth Brady. Yep. Oh, so I sent it upstairs. Oh. You can just get a darker copy. All right, I have it at home. Okay, thanks.
Ready? I'd like to return us from executive session. The only items that we were discussed were limited to the items under New Mexico SA 1978, Section 10-15-1H, Section 2, 7, and 8, and there was no action taken. Okay, so we're ready for our board announcements. Do we have an interpreter today?
Carl?
Okay.
Good evening. Alma is here. I'm sorry, Alma, I don't want to steal your thunder here. Okay, I'll just make the announcement. We have Ms. Behar here as our translator. If anyone from the audience needs translation to the board meeting in Spanish, she's more than happy to help you. Muy buenas tardes a aquellas personas que necesitan traducción en el español. Para seguir esta junta está la señora Behar allá atrás y puede asistirles.
Thank you. Okay, and we're now, I'd like to just point out that the superintendent is not here right now. She is actually going to speak at the City of Santa Fe, their last State of the City, but she will join us shortly. So we're going, and we've already changed the agenda. We're going to talk under superintendent, I'm sorry, I skipped right ahead. Board announcements. Does anyone else have any board announcement? Board Member Carrillo?
Friday night's a very big night
in Santa Fe. Anyone know what it is? Right? Espanola versus Capitol High School. When we play there or they play here, it is one of the biggest events in northern New Mexico. So, and I would advise you getting tickets early because it really does sell out. It ends up being standing room only. Espanola has a way of kind of arriving around 1 in the afternoon, trying to take up all the seats. But it really is probably one of the most exciting high school football games in the state every year when we play each other. So I would totally, if you can on Friday night, recommend, what? Oh, yeah, basketball. Did I say football? Oops, basketball. Well, also football when we meet. But no, it's really super duper. So I would encourage people to try to attend and wear black and teal and silver. Because if you wear red and gold, I swear.
Any board announcements, Board Member Garcia? And I would just like to say that student board member Weeby is not here tonight. He's home with the flu, so we hope that he feels better. And I would also like to note that Board Secretary Noble just arrived, so thank you for joining us. And we already changed the agenda. We're going, because the superintendent is not here, we're only going to do the first 2 items under the superintendent announcements, and then we're going to go ahead and do the remaining items when she returns. So I'll turn it over. We think that Mr. Grunler is filling in for the superintendent. So would you like to do the first 2 items this afternoon for us?
Thank you, Madam President. It's a pleasure. First item on our agenda for superintendent announcements is the Gonzales Community School Advanced Choir. I heard them warming up. They sounded terrific. Director Judith Rotenberg. And the names of the pieces are I Ask for One Day by Jim Papoulis and Imagine, which we all know, by John Lennon.
I ask for one day where I don't have to hear Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no country. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You fool, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. We'll be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You fool, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one, as one.
The Gonzales Community School Advanced Choir. Let's give them another round of applause.
And thank you so much, Gonzales. You guys did an awesome job. I remember when that song, I was about your age when that group was the biggest thing going. Obviously, I've aged some. And I can also see that the director from the Santa Fe High Choir is probably scoping you guys out to be part of her choir in a couple of years or maybe next year. So thank you. That was wonderful. Any other comments? Board Member Garcia.
I'd just like to thank the children at Gonzales School. You guys did an excellent job. It's actually one of my favorite songs, so great job.
Next announcement, Mr. Bradler.
The next superintendent announcement is out-of-state travel. The Santa Fe High School Choir will be traveling to Los Angeles, California, March 16th through 19th this year, competing at the Music in the Park Festival, where they've been many years and won multiple awards. So we wish you well and great success.
Okay, and now we're going to skip the rest of the items under superintendent announcement and go down to student board member announcements. Do we have anything, Ms.?
Yes, we do. So first off, the CHS girls basketball team beat Espanola for the first time in 10 years. This was on the 26th. This is also the first time in 10 years that they have been in first place during the district portion of the season. The girls have an opportunity to end the season with a winning record, which has not happened in 11 years. This is actually kind of crazy because I used to play on the basketball team, and seeing these girls transform from 8th grade year to senior year is incredible. Second off, we have boys basketball currently ranked 3rd in the state for 5A. Model legislature students were recognized on the House floor by Representative Trujillo. HOSA students go to competition Thursday and Friday of this week, and the district cheer competition at CHS this Saturday. And the CHS cheerleaders actually won first place at the Southwest Spirit competition, which is awesome. On another note, I would like to give an update on the construction of the school. It actually looks really good, and the security behind the office is awesome, how they buzz people in. I think that's really awesome. And second, the windows in the upstairs, they're just a little bit concerning just because of the shelter in places and lockdowns. So if we get those smoked out, which she said would happen, that would work. And the lunch lines, they're really short. Thank you guys so much. That's it.
Well, great, and you're part of that cheerleading squad, aren't you? So congratulations. Okay, and now we're down to public forum. Do we have anybody, I'm sorry, Board Member Garcia?
Just a couple of things. First of all, congratulations on the cheering squad. You guys actually did a good job, and I think you guys won overall grand champion, right? And I think you guys got like a $5,000 check, so congratulations on that. Let's see what else here. Also, I'm glad to hear that the construction of the building is coming out very good. I was actually at Capitol like 2 years ago, and I actually went there with then Principal Chanel, and actually walked through that school during the lunchtime, and it was amazing that how you children actually wait in line. And I'm very, very glad to hear that the lines have gone down since the construction. That's great. And that's all I have.
So, Dr. Lujan, you're going to do public forum for us tonight? Thank you.
Vice President Cashman, board members, Mr. Grundler, we do have one individual has signed up for public forum. So I'll go ahead and read the public forum ground rules. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. No sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I will give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue is allowed only during the public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it is on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Vice President Cashman, we have Marilyn Barnes.
I don't have any issue. I just always, when you approve a trip or we're here singing, I just always want to thank the board, because what you have done to support music through this is my 11th year in Santa Fe Public Schools, is so awe-inspiring and so amazing, because so many schools across the nation are not getting music. That's all I wanted to say was thank you.
Well, we thank you for what you do for our students in throughout the district, and I think Board Member Carrillo would like to make a comment.
Anyone out there that hasn't heard our choir perform, either on their own or with the combined music performances at Santa Fe High, is really missing out. And so I have a request, since it's early February. Could you let the superintendent know as soon as possible when your May performance, because you generally have one, is going to be, so that we don't schedule, and please don't do it on a first or third Tuesday of the month, so that we don't have other things scheduled.
So unfortunately, we were not able to rent a venue, so we're still trying to figure out how to get our 300-odd high school musicians at their spring concert. We're trying to think of maybe a, movable audience or movable kids downstairs in our performing arts building.
How did the James A. Little work out?
It was amazing.
For Christmas. Can we do that in May?
But Pandemonium Players has it for that whole week. We are singing March 3rd at Christ Church, and that's all 6 choirs. That's our 4 choirs that will go to music performance assessment, and it's the men's choir, Disney Dudes, and the women's choir, Disney Dolls, which will be performing in Los Alamos in competition. So Christchurch, just right over here, 9 o'clock on March 3rd. And if you've got any ideas, you never know. Sometimes I haven't gone through every auditorium in town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, and that just reminds me why we had a resolution a few years ago about needing a performing arts center for our students. So there's not enough performing spaces. Secretary Noble.
One or maybe two ideas. The College of Santa Fe campus has the Forum and the Garson Theater, and they're in control of, I believe the city is, Matt O'Reilly is working on those.
Public resource. Board Member Garcia.
Ms. Barnes, thank you for what you do for the district for the last 11 years. That's great, awesome. And good luck in your competition when you guys get out.
And before we go on to union update, I would remind everybody, I'm sure we have a very small audience tonight because everybody is rushing to the polls for the last-minute vote on SB 9. And as school board members, we can tell you the school district can't tell you, but we could tell you, please go out and vote, and please go out and vote yes. We desperately need your vote on those issues. There will be 3 questions on the ballot, 1 for Santa Fe Public Schools and 2 for Santa Fe Community College, and both Santa Fe Public Schools and the Community College needs your help, and we appreciate the community always supporting education for us. So I think the polls close at 7 o'clock, so you have an hour to rush and get there, and hopefully there won't be too long of the lines. Okay, union update.
Good evening. I'm Grace Mayer, NEA Santa Fe President and our teacher at Milagro Middle School. I'd like to just update the school board on the joint education committee hearing that was held on Saturday, where many teachers spoke. There was 3 hours of testimony from teachers around the state and educators, educational assistants, and some of their families as well, about some of the issues that are kind of a lot of us are reflecting on, that are sort of impeding education, but also our ability in the state to recruit and retain teachers and educators to the profession. Some of those issues that were brought up the behaviors that we're seeing in all different age groups because of opioid addiction in the family, poverty that's impacting kind of some of these children, not enough services by counselors and social workers to assist in that effort. And we had brought that up before, that our district is in need of more counselors and services to deal with some of the impacts that poverty has. Also incarceration of family members, and we have the highest rates of suicide for young people in the country. We also have the highest rates of teenage pregnancy. There's all of these negative things that do impact teaching and learning, and I think that we need to have a reality check about that, and I think that the legislature got that reality check. I know this school board has been receptive to that, and we've done some work in those directions through some of the services we provide. There was also other issues about pre-K testing and how it's impacting instructional time. And this is happening in our district as the requirements for some of these standardized tests are sort of, reaching down into pre-K, which used to be kind of more of just a monitoring kind of program of
making sure kids were kind of developmentally kind of appropriate, like moving forward in a certain direction. And unfortunately, we're asking pre-K and some of our kindergarten teachers to do testing, and mostly kindergarten in our district, but there are other districts who are they're forcing it further down. Some of these tests are on technology, so kindergarten students come into to be tested every couple of weeks for the first few weeks. They've never seen a computer before. They have on a headset, and oftentimes that person's talking to them and asking them to manipulate a machine they have no idea what to do with. And I really would like for us to sort of look into how much testing is required from PED for kindergarten, and if there's any way we can try to reduce some of that so it's not impacting learning as much. Because the teachers are having to do these, it might take only 10 or 15 minutes per student, but if you're testing each student at a time, then your assistant or aide is actually in front of the classroom. So, when you have 20 kids, you have to get through all of this, and every 2 weeks there's a lot of stuff that happens in terms of that. And also, it's not developmentally appropriate to have kids testing at that age, as far as I'm concerned. There was some discussion, too, about proposals in terms of merit pay, below-the-line bonuses for teachers. And I, in fact, spoke to that issue, and I told them that our district did, in good faith, try to come up with the district with a plan that would get money out to all the employees that touch children in terms of education, and that would be everyone, including our bus drivers and our secretaries and our educational assistants. And we did that for 2 years, and we found that there was problems with it. And one of the biggest problems was that some of our teachers who work with students who don't perform well on high-stakes tests, 35% of their evaluation is based on those tests, and even though those kids improve, and sometimes to the point where they're graduating, they're not performing well on PARCC, and so those teachers in special ed and some of these other, our schools that don't perform well, which are most of our high poverty schools, generally are getting less money. So they're rewarding teachers who work with kids who don't have as many kind of obstacles to their education, which is a problem because we all know that everybody is working tremendously hard at every level in every school, whether or not it's an A or an F school, to make sure that kids are trying to meet expectations and grow and develop as they can. So I don't know if they're going to move forward on that. It seems like it is in the budget to move forward with that below-the-line funding, but it's unfortunate that we're still sort of pitting teachers against each other and feeling like if they only worked at that one school, they might get $5,000 more or $10,000 more, and that's just not fair. And but those teachers who are receiving those scores despite some of the challenges, we applaud them. But it's kind of a numbers game. It's a weird kind of numbers game. So there was some discussion about that. Overall, I thought it was an interesting couple of hours, and we didn't get any newspaper coverage, but I heard there was some talk on the news, so that's good. And I know that Mr. Grumler was also there to speak on behalf of the district and talk about our flat pay tables and that we need kind of to pass a budget that would allow us sort of average percentage so that we can negotiate some money throughout the tables and not have mandates across the board because that limits what we can do. And that leads me into my next comment where we We have met with the district. This is the second time about the compensation moving into next year. The district has formed a kind of a task force, which they've asked the unions to participate in. We did a lot of brainstorming last Thursday and also today about how we can maybe redo our pay tables, which so that when people look to the district for employment, they see that there's some progression and that they can see movement within those pay tables, as opposed to what we've been doing, which is pushing down our tables so there's like $1 or 10 cents in between steps. And, you know, when people are looking for a job, they're looking for a career as well. And especially if they're, you know, moving to a different location, they want to see that there's movement in those tables. So we did a lot of work today trying to come up with the strategy for the pay tables, and also talking about how we can move some of our lowest paid workers, our educational assistants, and some of our transportation aides, and also our cafeteria workers to $15 an hour. Currently, they're at 11, I think 11, and in March, we will match 1140 as the base. And it's just, we haven't had the money to invest, so we've tried to give raises to our secretaries over the last 3 years, and we have 3%, but, you know, we're still nowhere near where I think it's livable for this city. And some of those workers, like the nutrition workers and the transportation employees, the aides, who are critical of getting our young pre-K kids to school safely, because a lot of them are dealing with those younger kids now in car seats and everything else. There's a lot more responsibility. We're really far from the $15 an hour goal, but we're talking about how we can maybe have a 3-year plan to get them closer to that. And that would be our goal. I don't know if we can do any work this year towards that, but I'm hoping we can do some of it. And one of the concerns I have, though, is looking over this presentation, but I do say it does talk about creating school budgets in March and the fair student funding model, which, you know, and well, the board members that have been here for a while know that I'm not a big fan of that because it sort of sets up these false choices like, oh, do you want an art teacher or a librarian? Do you want a, you know, counselor or, you know, a technology teacher? And we want all those things, and I know we don't have all the resources to pay for all those things, but I think that we need to think about how we can compensate the most people that are currently working now, and maybe change those tables around. I think that we need to look at that first and really strategize how to get our teachers pay raises, especially our level 2 and 3 that haven't seen raises. When they bump and when the legislature asks for like increases in the base at level 1 or tier 1 for teachers, $2,000, or tier 2, those are incoming people that haven't spent 15 years with us, and and so it doesn't trickle down. So we got to figure out how to make that, you know, make an effort to sort of get that money there, and that might mean looking at every position that we have and deciding that if they're not directly, you know, impacting student achievement in the classroom with kids in front of them, then maybe those positions we can't really continue to sustain. And I'm a little concerned that there's schools that have 3 or 4 of those different positions that may think, okay, well, we want this instructional coach or we want this dean of students, and we're going to forego a librarian or another counselor. And I just think that that's too, it's too limited in where we're trying to go in this bigger picture. But I've brought that up before in several years, and I just hope that we can maybe think about having a larger kind of view of how we need to recruit people and then retain them. And also how we need to take some of those experts that we may have moved into instructional coaches or dean of students or some of these others and ask them to go back into the classroom and teach kids in order for that, and to sort of pay them a little better just like everyone else, as opposed to sort of strategizing how to make these administrator type positions without really being administrators. And I know our administrators need help too, but I don't know how to get the money to the classroom educators, the EAs, and those teachers without looking at some of those other positions that don't touch a student all the time. And it's going to be a difficult decision, but I'm putting it out there, as I do every year. But I'm hoping that with these talks and on the compensation task force, that we kind of come up with some strategies before some of these budget meetings with the schools, and so that people, well, mostly the principals, sort of have a sense of what we want to do as a complete district, as opposed to, their individual school, because we sometimes get myopic and think, well, this is what I need, but what's in the best interest of the district is really up to the school board and up to the unions to try to negotiate. And that comes kind of later in April, traditionally. But hopefully this preliminary work will guide us into those decisions. The other thing, I would like to invite you all to Meow Wolf next week, February 14th. The students from Milagro Middle School's Art Club, Art Thunder, painted a mural there with Art Smart and Meow Wolf, an artist at Meow Wolf. So we're having an unveiling from 5:30 to 6:30, and we're also selling some artwork to fund the club. So I'd like to see you there. And that is my update.
Thank you, President, Mayor. And we do know, I think the board has talked about some of your concerns of the budget and funding positions, and I think that will become an important part of when we start talking about budget, because we have concerns about counselors, librarians, nurses, and as you said, it shouldn't be a choice of either or. It's a choice that we need them all, but whether we have the budget. But I thank you for bringing that up again and reminding us, because I think that helps us to constantly hear it, so it keeps it in the forefront of our minds as far as what we're going to do. And I know that Board Member Garcia, you had something?
I just wanted to thank you for spending your Saturday at the Roundhouse Let's Play session and representing the district, you as well as Carl. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we're going on to consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's a unanimous vote. Okay, thank you. Board update and follow-up. Does anyone have anything from previous meetings that they wanted to bring up? Okay. So now, do you want to skip probably? I don't think that the superintendent felt that we were going to go zipping through the meeting as quick as what we are. So maybe we should just delay superintendent update and follow-up. Is that agreeable with you, Mr. Grendler? And so, I already did that. So let's go now to presentations, discussion, and possible action. So Mr. Grendler, would you begin for us?
Thank you, Madam President. The first presentation is the PED and Department of Health flu season guidance. There was a conference call with the Department of Health and the Public Education Department, and the superintendent also put out a robocall with some guidance to parents. So this memorializes some of that work, and our lead nurse, Anita Het, is going to lead the conversation along with Dr. James Lujan, and I'm sure that Sue O'Brien, the Director of Student Wellness, will chime in.
Good evening, Vice President Cashman and members of the board. My name is Anita Het. I'm the lead nurse with Santa Fe Public Schools, and I'm going to report to you this evening information that was presented from the Public Education Department as well as the Department of Health regarding the flu. So the flu is an infection that infects the upper respiratory system. And so the symptoms are fever, which is defined as a temperature greater than 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It can also include cough, sore throat, runny or stuffy nose, body aches, headache, chills, fatigue, and sometimes vomiting and diarrhea. So the flu is definitely increasing in Santa Fe, and I've got some data here from January 14th through January 20th. The percentage of flu reported was 5.8, and that's compared to all other illnesses reported. And this past week, January 21st through the 27th, it increased 0.9% to 6.7%. So it's definitely increasing, and it will continue to increase until it peaks. The Department of Health really cannot guess as to when it will peak, but it's definitely moving in that direction. So we're going to continue to get flu cases. So it still has not peaked yet. However, we do, is that the first one? Yes, it is. Okay, sorry. So we have fortunately not had any pediatric deaths in the state. There have been some adult deaths this year. So far, there have been 24 adult deaths in the state of New Mexico. The flu shot is definitely still relevant. The Department of Health encourages people to receive the flu vaccine, and even though it's been reported to not be as effective, it's still recommended because it can decrease symptoms and it can decrease the duration of the illness as well. They also recommend, if you have had the flu and you have not received the flu vaccine, to get the flu vaccine, because even if you've gotten the flu, it may be a different strain that you get next, so it can still provide some protection to you and also again decrease the symptoms and the duration of the illness. The Department of Health does not recommend school closures. It's not considered a control method, so that was something that they emphasized. They do recommend, if staff illnesses become to a point where the schools cannot be adequately staffed and you're considering closing a school based on that you contact the Department of Health and talk to them to see if they can provide any kind of support. Of course, if there are excessive staff absences, it's recommended to monitor that and communicate with your administrators, and obviously Dr. Garcia would guide any direction leading to school closures. All right, so we've moved on to our response to what we have done in regards to the flu. We provided a handout in the weekly packets to parents that provides information on what the flu is, how does the flu spread, what are symptoms of the flu, how long can a sick person spread the flu, so what's the contagious period, what to do to prevent your child from getting sick, also family members, community members, and what to do if the student or staff member becomes sick with the flu. So we provided this information, and I believe that it's been handed out to you so you can look at it. We provided it in English and Spanish to all district students. We also had a robocall sent out, and that went out on January 18th. The robocall included all of the information on how to, well, what the symptoms of the flu are and what the CDC recommendations are. We did explain that it's important for sick people to stay home and not return until they have been fever-free without the aid of a fever-reducing medication, such as acetaminophen or ibuprofen, which would be Tylenol or Motrin. We also sent out information that if they want their child to receive a flu vaccine, we are continuing to hold our SKIP clinics, which are, the SKIP program is School Kids Influenza Immunization Program, and it is a partnership between UNM, the Department of Health, and the Vaccines for Children program, which allows us to provide flu vaccine to school students free of charge. We do this every year. We usually offer these clinics at the school sites, generally in October and November. But because of the high rate of flu cases, we're continuing to offer it as needed if parents change their mind and decide they want to go ahead and get their students the flu vaccine. And we instructed them to contact their school nurse if they're interested. We also have that information on our website, and along with the consent forms and information regarding the vaccines. In addition to that, we still have flu vaccine for adults, staff members, not for parents, but we do have it available for staff. It was donated to us by Christus St. Vincent's, and we have actually, up to this point in time, we have administered 1,825 student vaccines across the district, and we have administered 408 adult vaccines. That also includes clinics that I've done at BF Young and here at the main office, and transportation. So our bus drivers also were able to take advantage of this offering. So we also have information on our website that mimics the paperwork that we sent out. We actually have this on the website as well for parents. So again, part of our response is to try to encourage staff and students to stay home until they're fever-free for 24 hours without the aid of fever-reducing medication.
I do want to add on that point that we received a letter recently from the Public Ed Department that teachers under New Mexico Teach that have been out with the flu can provide a doctor's excuse so that it doesn't count against them. HR is supposed to get out a letter or an email to all teaching staff that are under New Mexico Teach to know that they'll get not have that count against them, which is the first time they've done that, and I'm glad to see that.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. So we actually did all of this stuff before we received the conference call with PED and Department of Health. We had been thinking about this ahead of time. So starting the week of January 16th is when we started sending out this information to families. But then we did attend the conference call on the 26th, and using the information that we received for that conference call or during that conference call, sent out an email to district employees with all of the information or highlights of the information that we received from the Department of Health. The Department of Health gave us further guidance to continue to monitor students for, or schools for flu-like illness. They wanted us to report cases that are out of the ordinary for this time of year, because this time of year we do see a lot of flu. But if we're seeing really high numbers in our schools, they would like to know so that they can surveil and follow up. They also said they would like to provide us with any assistance that we might need. So I believe that is all the information I have. Do we have any questions?
Thank you so much for providing it, because I know it's, you know, every night we see on the news something about the flu, so I'm glad we were proactive in getting on top of it, and I just want to comment, I think probably one of the reasons they're saying don't close the schools if we have a number of cases is because then we have kids sitting at home that don't have any place to go, and so that's probably why PED is recommending, you know, not school closures, and they would,
It's actually Department of Health, though, I think.
Okay.
It's really DOH.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you so much. I'm glad this was very timely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I will note that the superintendent is back, so before we go on to the other presentations, I think the superintendent would like to go back to her announcements and then her update. So I will turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Under announcements, I just wanted to let you all know that on February 24th at 7 p.m., it's a Saturday night, there will be a fundraiser benefiting Santa Fe Public Schools K-12 Music Ed program, the Santa Fe Public Schools Music Faculty and Friends Cabaret. It will be at the Lodge at Santa Fe in the Maria Benitez Cabaret Theater. You'll get to hear Broadway tunes, piano solos, operatic arias, pop tunes. I understand it's a great night, and I'll be co-emceeing, so I'm looking forward to that event, 7 p.m. And, yeah. Also, PACS in Santa Fe Public Schools. PACS is a behavior management program, and the district is proud that 4 of our schools are full PACS schools, may be receiving the grant from the DWI task force, and we'll soon be adding E.J. Martinez. So the 4 schools we currently have are Salazar, Cesar Chavez, Amyville, and Sweeney. And the cost for the training is about $20,000, includes kits for 40 teachers and a coach. And right now we have 150 teachers that are trained in the district. This is an evidence and research-based program to build self-regulation skills. Students with evidence of trauma show great progress with PACS. And then we have a cohort of educational leaders that are visiting Washington, D.C. with LANO. Leaders from northern New Mexico, including members of LANO and our staff, Vanessa Romero, Chanel Wilson Segura, Jack Lane, and Bretta Cording, are attending the Mind Steps workshop. The workshop was called the Builders Lab. It's meant to support principals in their efforts in transforming the school culture and building master teachers. And Gwen is here, so thank you for your support around this initiative. Also, Jeff Gephardt, our Chief Community Engagement Officer, attended a bidders conference with the communities and schools, the students at the Center Challenge Planning Grant Conference with communities and schools, and the Santa Fe Community Foundation in Houston, Texas, January 31st through February 1st. The theme was Collective Impact, and the purpose to seek for funding with alignment of community schools, Opportunity Santa Fe Collaborative Working Groups, community partners, the City of Santa Fe, and Santa Fe Public School initiatives. This grant seeks to involve parents, students, and community to be involved in the discussion, so we'll see where we go from there. Lastly, I wanted to ask the board to be thinking about this. Midtown Campus Community. As the Santa Fe University Art and Design moves closer to a 2018 closing date, the City of Santa Fe has been preparing for a once-in-a-generation opportunity to repurpose a true gem located in the geographic center of our community. The city is reaching out to the community to help guide their efforts in creating a strategic vision for the future of this important property and our city. They call this process the Midtown Campus Project, and we committed to help get the word out. So if anyone is watching, you can get a link on our website or go to www.santafe.gov state.gov//midtown_campus_project. But just go to our website for the link. That would be the easiest thing. But on that note, I think that we should be thinking about how the schools could also be a part of that in terms of our alternative programs or what we might want to be doing with some existing alternative schools. I think it's a great opportunity for collaboration. So staff will be thinking of ideas. I hope that you will as well. And perhaps we can discuss it at a future board meeting or a study session about how we might be able to be a part of the use of that facility. And then moving on to my updates and follow-up is the Santa Fe High School handicap parking. Santa Fe has recently undergone a campus-wide master plan which includes recommendations for phased-in improvements. The first phase included relocation of the administrative offices to improve visibility and supervision, upgrade accessibility, and increase safety for the campus. Also included in the first phase of improvements are upgrades to campus-wide handicapped accessibility. The project is under staff review and will go to the CRC for funding considerations in the near future, with plans to initiate the project in the fall. I think this was an issue that was brought up by Ms. Price, I believe, but Ms. Wagner, Yonda Wagner, is available for any questions that you might have. Yes.
No, I brought this up because a constituent who's in high school athletics there.
Oh, that's right.
Right. So I'm familiar with the plan and what we're doing, what the CRC is going to look at relative to phase one of a possible plan for Santa Fe High School. But I'm wondering specific to the parking, because it would seem that it's just a matter of reallocating more spaces closer to the gate as it relates to entrance to the field and the gym, because a lot of the handicap spaces, as I'm like visualizing it right now, are more in front of the theater and performing arts area going up those stairs. So, and that seems to be something that can be done pretty much right away, or not. I mean,
Vice President Cashman, Board Member Creo, it's certainly something we can look at from a maintenance standpoint, but the intent of the master plan for the campus is to look at it more holistically, rather than, a piecemeal approach addressing one section of parking spots at a time. So I can get an update via the superintendent on that.
So in advocating for this person as well as others, you've known me long enough to know that I'd never recommend anything piecemeal. But if it really is just a matter of redrawing some of the lines to get through the athletics and all the different events that happen in the gym and on the field for the rest of this year, I would say that on behalf of those that have trouble walking the extra 100 yards, that it would be worth it.
We'll take a look at that and see what we can do and get back to you on that. So we'll revisit this.
That's a question. Christy, can you tell me what the cost is going to be of this, more or less? Or what the district's going to spend on it?
Vice President Cashman and Board Member Garcia will be bringing the phase one of the Santa Fe High School campus improvements to the board for review in the near future. It's a multi-million-dollar project. Phase one will depend on the final CRC allocation.
And the allocation is actually coming out of what? Is this a general obligation bond that was approved by the voters, or just contingency money?
No, this is a 2017 general obligation bond project.
And then right now, so we're actually doing a full master plan on Santa Fe High, right, on that entire 90 acres out there? So is this a different handicap master plan, and we're doing a separate entire master plan for that 90 acres?
Vice President Cashman and Board Member Garcia, Superintendent Garcia, the entire campus was master planned as a part of our 2017 general obligation bond planning for phased improvements to the campus. The first phase is funded and currently being identified and approved through our Citizens Review Committee process, and it will be brought to the Board of Education for review.
And when is that coming forward to the Board of Education for review?
I anticipate bringing something to the Board of Education for consideration over the next couple of months. It depends on our process with the Citizens Review Committee.
So we're doing one master plan that includes ADA accessibility to the entire site?
Vice President Cashman and Board Member Garcia, Superintendent Garcia, a master plan for a campus includes all needs on a campus, programmatic, accessibility, compliance. It looks at building age and the longevity of our systems. It looks at parking, paving, drainage, athletics, roofing. It tries to incorporate all the anticipated needs of any given school. In this case, it's a campus with multiple buildings. And so the master plan can be looked at sort of like a mini facility master plan, in that you're planning a course of action for a single campus over multiple years and improvements.
So we're doing one master plan or two master plans?
So, but I'm going to ask if it's okay with you, because this was really just an update on the handicap parking, and she's doing a great job, but I don't think, I really would prefer that we not do this right now, if that's okay with you, because I think we're delving further, deeper
I'd like to know
into whatever.
when can we talk about it and meet about it?
Yeah, no, we can, and we can actually even bring that presentation to Santa Fe High. But this was just an update right now on the handicap parking. And so I just, would prefer that we're fully prepared to give a presentation, and if that is a request of the board on that issue. And then we'll be bringing it in a comprehensive way to you, if that's okay. Thank you. So my next update is a legislative update regarding the legislature. And so just to share with you, the House approved House Bill 2, $6.3 billion general fund budget last Wednesday. Public school support and related appropriations up 1.4%. Below the line, 2.7%. Compensation, right now, we're looking at a 2.5% increase for all licensed teachers and a 2% salary increase for all other instructional staff. Other highlights, it appears that there will be an increase in fixed costs of 2.79 million. Below the line funding, it looks like K3 Plus is up 27.4%, and pre-K funding up 38.1%. So I hope that we will see, when we apply, that we see an increase in programs for us. I think the most interesting legislative bill to watch is the Senate Joint Resolution 2 and House Joint Resolution 1, additional funding on the constitutional amendment for early childhood. It did pass the House 36-33. It has passed the House before. The real hurdle usually comes in Senate Finance, so we'll see if that repeats itself. I also am... Yes,
Are
ma'am.
you finished with the?
Yes, ma'am.
So on the first one, the House went ahead and approved the pay raises for our teachers and instructional staff. Have they also approved all the funding that's going to go, that we need, or are we going to be approved for raising those without being funded for them?
I think we're going to have to look at the analysis of where everything winds up, right, to really know if it is an unfunded mandate. Mr. Rendler, anything on that you want to add?
Just very quickly, Superintendent, it looks like, at least they feel like they fully funded it. But on the analysis that we did on the $2,000 additional for each tier, it looks like it's not fully funded for us. So the rest of them will have to see, how it comes forward in the approvals.
Thank you. And then next, I'd like to introduce, if you'd like to come forward, our new Director of Safety and Security, Mario Salvidres. He's lived in Santa Fe and attended Santa Fe Public Schools since kindergarten. He graduated from Santa Fe High School. So here's an example of Grow Your Own, where he wrestled and played football. He received an associate's degree from Santa Fe Community College and a Bachelor of Science in Business Management from Colorado State University. He has always dreamed of becoming a police officer, which he did in 1998. He worked with the New Mexico State Police for 5.5 years prior to moving to the Santa Fe Police Department, where he has worked for the past 13 years. He most recently served as Operational Deputy Chief at Santa Fe Police Department, which includes oversight of support operations, special operations, patrol division, and investigation division. And I just want to say he was the top candidate that we interviewed. We had site-based staff, district staff on the interview committee. I also want to thank Gabe Romero for his service, and he will continue in this position, our hybrid position, until March, when I believe Mr. Salvidas will come in. But he will still be part of our team, and I'm still speaking to Mr. Romero, which I shouldn't be. But I'm very excited about Mr. Salvidas joining us. As I said in a quote to the newspaper, in these difficult times that we live in, having someone with his experience, I think, is going to be a real add-on. But I also was impressed with his sensitivity about what it means working in a school district. It's different, right? It's not like being out on the city beat. And so how you talk to kids, how you work with staff and faculty, he was very sensitive to that as well. So welcome, and if you'd like to say a few words, but first, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And he will be starting with us, I believe, the first week in March?
March 5th.
March 5th.
Yes. Board, Vice President, members of the committee, Superintendent Garcia, thank you all very much for allowing me to come here tonight. I am very excited to join your team. I'm excited to continue the improvements and the securities that Mr. Romero put in place. We can always reevaluate things. I've always been the person who said we have to have a continuous feedback loop. What we put in place today may not work 6 months or a year from now. So my intention is to review everything we have, make this as safe as possible for our children, and I'm vested in this school system, not just as a graduate, but my own daughters are part of the Santa Fe public school system. I have 3 girls in the system, and I assure you I relate with most of the parents that I want my girls to be safe when they're at school, and that's my goal. And it's time for any questions.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. You've got some tough shoes to fill.
Yes, I do.
But we welcome you, and I read the interview in the paper, and I noticed that one of your daughters wanted you based at her school. So what schools are your daughters at?
Vice President, board members, Superintendent Garcia, my oldest at Santa Fe High, she's a senior this year, so I'm going to lose her to college. And my other 2 are a 6th grader and a 3rd grader at Kearney Elementary.
Well, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes my announcements. So we're ready for, I believe, the presentation B, budget process. Mr. Grenler?
And while we're waiting for Mr. Grunler to set up, I've been seeing people walk in to vote, so it's still not too late, people out in the community, to come in and vote. We want to have a groundswell, so please come in and vote.
Okay. All right.
Board Member Correa.
This goes to the appointment for the new position in security for the district. Because of what's going on in the legislature, and I don't remember, I think it's House Bill 50. Is that the one that's Mr. Nathan Thick, New Mexico? 180. Because it's the bill that just completely misrepresents the nature of admin relative to school districts. So it's just important for people to know that it's not as though we're creating another position, another admin position that may cost, we're paying you, are you still here? Oh, it's like $300,000. No, I'm just kidding with you. But whatever the position is, it's not something we created that's going to be an additional expense to the admin budget. What's happened is that we've had Rudy move over to operations, and we're filling a position. And it's just because in the climate right now where people are looking at us, especially relative to admin dollars, I just don't want there to be any misunderstanding, thinking like we're creating a new position.
Thank you.
So there, thanks.
Ready? Vice President Cashman, members of the board, Superintendent Garcia, tonight, this presentation is a summary of our budget process. And what we plan to do is go through it month by month and show the different types of milestones that we need to reach for each month in order to get through our process, which really reaches for district operating budget board approval in June. So we're already past December, but here's the things we worked on in December, and we had a finance subcommittee in December, which is really taking a look at what we think it's going to be. You know, based on the information we have, all the changes that are taking place in current year, the climate in the legislature, and what it looks like for next year, just to set the stage for what we're about to enter. And in January, we've amazingly completed January as well. And this is really planning for the budget cycle. So the 80th day student membership report is set, and that really sets what we expect our student enrollment to be, because you might remember SEG is based on enrollment of the average of the 80th and 120th day. 120th day is always fairly close to 80th day. So that's helpful. We were involved with assessing the legislative initiatives and what it was going to mean for the SEG. And then this year, really the biggest challenge is going to be evaluating the ins and the outs of the SEG, so we know where our baseline is, and we know what the challenge is going to be for us to undertake to balance the operational budget, which also relates to the transportation budget and instructional materials. So we're gaining some understanding of that. So now we're into February, and this is the month where we really set ourselves up to launch school budgets and department budgets. So with the 80th day student membership, student data then is able to work on the projections per class, per school that we'll use to establish the enrollment projections, and then also based on that, the funding projections for the school, which are the initial funding projections, which are modified as we go through to support basic needs and basic supports. So this process is significant. It takes a significant amount of time and involvement with the principals on feedback on the enrollment projections, but that really is important to set so we can put in motion March. Which is creating the school budgets. So, you know, with the training of the school advisory councils, with the models in the hands of the principals, then they begin to work on their resource choices for their schools. And I think that you're aware that the process certainly continues into April and reviews. We'll get to that in a second. But the process for the study sessions with the board on discussing what it looks like and creating a budget strategy this year, really in alignment with our views of the strategic plan, will be absolutely critical. So that begins in March and rolls forward for the next couple of months. And of course, as President Meyer mentioned, we commenced the bargaining and also with SFPS to establish that relationship and how it relates to the budget. So the timing is very important as we work together on establishing that piece of the budget, which is, of course, the major part of the operational budget. So then we move into April, and the first thing that we do is complete the school and department budgets, really. So the school budgets, we meet with the principals and the school advisory council representatives the principal brings with the district team, which involves Deputy Superintendent Sink, representatives for business services and human resources, some of our program managers, art and music, for example. Also, student wellness is present with both the director and our lead nurse. And we talk about all the different pieces in supporting the school in addition to what the school is actually asking for. And last year, as an example, much of those budgets are augmented with baseline needs. Last year, largely for supports, school supports, and we typically, well, we do. We make sure that we're in compliance with state statute, the collective bargaining agreement, board guidance on particular issues, and then also, you know, baseline for student supports, which is coming from the experts on our staff, particularly for our health professionals and our counselors. And so on the department side, April is a key month then to be doing the same type of reviews. Review all of the templates and ground ourselves in history and create and review and tentatively approve the department budgets. And of course, April, you'll see on the study session side, that's really a very, very key month on reviewing and updating, refining the district budget strategy. We'll also, at this point in time, have our operational budget, the SEG, and the other revenue refined, because spring budget workshop will take place in the first week of April. We'll have our unit value. We'll know exactly what we have to work with in revenue and the operational budget, and then also in transportation and instructional materials, as we know how they relate into the operational budget. So we can really present a good look at what we have to work with and what the challenges will be for us to resolve. Then we move to May. May is obviously the decision month. And so mid-May, we have a board meeting, and we'll target that as we did last year to have our work completed and have a district operating budget in front of the board, which is fully understood for all the funds across the general funds, the special revenue funds, and the capital funds, and ready for board approval. And then, of course, we really need to target completion of our bargaining unit work with the district, particularly on the financial issues that affect the budget. That's always the goal for timing, and one of the reasons why Grace was mentioning, we're beginning the work that on the compensation task force that the superintendent commissioned for us to begin these discussions, which are very broad-based and have a lot of work to complete, too much work to complete in just a month or two, so we're getting a running start. All right, continue to May. Then once that happens, we take the detail that had been developed with all the schools and the departments, and we roll that up into district-wide estimates and projections for the new year in a large packet for the public education department. So it loses its school and department identity, but takes on a huge amount of detail in job classes and functions and object codes, as well as a whole set of reports on what the district's going to do the next year, which involve everyone at the table here and the superintendent to compile. So that is submitted. And that finishes the work in May. And then in June, we complete an informal budget review with the public education department. They review the packet that we sent. And then ask us questions or whatnot, and we typically end up making some small modifications. And then they decide whether we're going to have a formal review. They call it a technical review at the public education department, where both budget and program officials from PED are there. Last year they waived that. In previous years we held that, so we're not sure what will happen this year. Then it's time for us to take the summer off. No, just kidding. What happens in July is we receive the budget approval from the public education department, and then we're working to rebuild that summary at the district level back to the schools and the departments in our system so that it matches the OBMS system, as it's called, from the public education department, which is a huge amount of work and goes in parallel with the work of human resources to fill those positions that are authorized in the budget. So that's just some more detail there. Did I just turn out? No, here we go. And then we continue to review and approve BARS as funding award letters are received. We always hope to receive most of that information so we can include that in our district operating budget that the board approves. But we always have a number that are late from the public education department on the award letter side. So July is often a heavy month in initial budget BARS for new funds that we receive authorization to submit. All right, of course, that continues throughout the year. And then all year, a significant a number of things happen, as you're all aware, for changes in our budgets, whether it's a new fund that comes forward, like we just had with Carl Perkins in this consent agenda today, or adjustments up or down in existing funds, or moving some funds around to match new plans for budget. And those always come to the board. And then the second bullet is a recognition of what we all know. It's a roadmap. It's a very detailed roadmap, but it is a roadmap. And there are many, many situations that arise during the year where the superintendent and the board, if it creates in a bar, we need to address emerging challenges. So there's always reflection and flexibility in the budget to be able to support that work. These are our study sessions. You can see that we ramp up with a lot of information in February and in March as the work is happening to build the budgets. Then in April, it's very, very heavy. The April study sessions are absolutely critical to discuss and anchor the board's strategy and priorities in the budget, which will then come all together in the presentation in May, and then to be ready for the board review and approval on May 15th. We'll stand for questions.
Board Member Correa.
First, relative to transportation, does it look like we're going to be held harmless in transportation relative to the money we're being given? Will it pay for itself with state money, or are we going to have to subsidize it from operations again?
Vice President Cashman, Member Carrillo, Superintendent Garcia, there is an increase in the transportation budget, which is fairly significant, which has been demanded throughout the state, and the legislature and the public education department both felt there needed to be an increase there. Our estimate right now is that $250,000 to $300,000 additional will come to us, all else being equal, and that will be close, if not enough, to reduce or eliminate the subsidy from the operational budget in the last couple of years.
All right, terrific. Then on cash reimbursements, I mean, that was, to me, whoever submitted that bill, that was a pie in the sky thing, but is that actually looking like it may happen, or?
Right, Vice President Cashman, Member Carrillo, Superintendent Garcia. The best information we have is that with the time running out at the legislature, it's going to be very difficult to get additional bills through past the actual HB2 and the work with the Senate. So it's unlikely, but it's still going to be heard this next week.
Do we know, I might be sitting in my email box, when Senate Bill 2, right, is going to be heard in finance? The joint resolution, that's what I meant, because that's...
No.
No.
The vote was just today.
It just will probably get reported out tomorrow or this evening.
Okay. And then, can you go back, please, to the slide that had the different study session dates? There we go. So, for the sake of Rudy and Kate, should you be here and not over there on Washington Avenue? Not Washington, Lincoln. Strategic plan, when will we, because obviously our strategic plan is going to determine our budget. So when are we going to be presented with the first portion of the strategic plan, then when are we going to have time to work on it, so that, because when people ask what do you do, this is the main thing a board does, basically crafts, works with whatever vision we come up with and doles out the money, power of the purse. So where we put our money relative to the strategic plan becomes very important.
So we committed, board president, you're sitting in as president this evening, members of the board, February 27th, the last study session in February, you had asked for us to bring the KPIs, the goal statements, you have your goal areas, all of that. We will have on that date.
So then conceivably we would...
We'll probably be doing both. You'll probably be doing some brief budgetary stuff, but most of it will be around the strategic plan on the 27th.
Okay, and there's also in between those two, there's a board meeting on March 6th. So if we had to discuss then as well. All right, I just wanted to make sure there was ample time for us to really hone the strategic plan so that we could then make budgetary decisions. All right, thank you.
Actually, on that point, Vice President Cashman, Member Correa, and Superintendent, this is an ideal schedule to be able to review, discuss, and incorporate the pillars of the strategic plan and the goal areas and you know, what we're tracking in the district on how that evaluates against our priorities. So it seems like it's perfect timing to me to be able to do that. And just for, you know, our new board members, what we typically do in these study sessions is we provide updates on what we know on the financial side and what particularly the operational budget is looking like with revenue up until we finalize that after spring budget workshop. But the majority of the study session is talking about the key issues which relate to the strategic plan and the priorities of the board and the strategies that we can put in motion and to be able to support them optimally in the budget.
Any other board members? I have a question on slide number 5. At the same time, it's in March, creating the school budgets and creating the district budget strategy. Those seem to be, and maybe you didn't mean it, but they seem to be in the wrong order. We should first be figuring out what the district budget strategy is so our schools can create it, because as I spoke to President Mayer before, you know, the board may want to say, we want this funded, and it's not an option at the school level to fund something. We may say we want a counselor, or so it seems like we need to have some input before they get out to the schools, and then the schools say, what are you doing? I thought, so where are we going to be on that, superintendent? You know, I know it's complicated and we're in a time crunch, but I think the board may want to weigh in a little bit on what our priorities are before the SACs and the school budgets.
Well, I mean, I think that some of this happens parallel, and it's a fairly dynamic process. He laid it out in a very linear view, but in reality, a lot of this stuff is happening simultaneously. It's sort of like the year last year, because it was a 60, I was going to say 90-day session, it felt like it, but because it was a 60-day session, right, we didn't even know what our budget was going to be, so we were working on a variety of scenarios. And the strategic plan we'll probably have to bring back also, because, you know, our intent was to look, or to try to have for you, and what you had said, you know, we work on the tactics. You wanted to look at the overall goal areas, KPIs, et cetera. With that said, I know that there's some initiatives that you were interested in. You know, we have some strategies that could require funding that might move some of those goals. So we'll try to have as much of that early on to you so that you do that planning. With that said, if you know off the bat that you want to phase in what we talked about in terms of a basic program, counselors, nurses, I'm just using that as an example, and what would be your priority to phase that in, then obviously those adjustments would have to be made to the school budgets as well. The reality is there's so little wiggle room, to be honest. You know, I know that they get to meet and they do all of that, but it's not like they're so flush that there's a lot of, a lot of discretionary money to play with.
And just before let me just have a follow-on. So does every school have a SAC in place, or are we missing schools that don't have SACs in
So
place?
we need to go back, and Ms. Zink, I think you're collecting that data, right, on the SACs of what the schools have them. Now, some are probably more robust than others. Some are not as big as others. I think it varies by school in terms of how active they are, but we can certainly do another review and bring back that data if the board is interested in that.
Member Garcia? She answered your question. So I would probably say for board members, at that first meeting that we're going to have on February 27th, that talks about budget, if there's some things that you think definitely have to be in the budget. Maybe that's the time to bring those issues up, so the staff knows where we're thinking as a board. I know that Board Member Garcia was not there at our June board retreat, but there were some things that the board talked about and said, you know, this is a priority. So maybe in the next couple of weeks, you can revisit in your mind what
I
are
found
some of
those notes. I found the notes, and
Good.
so I have them for you if you want me to email them to you again.
Yes, that
Many
would
of
be
the
great.
things, actually, it was interesting, we did, you know, like the attributes of the graduate, and, you know, there was just different pieces. There are a couple that are outstanding that can be folded into the strategic plan. So I did find those and made them available to staff as we did our planning to look at those notes from your June meeting.
So if you could email them to all the board members so we can refresh our memory on what we thought was good in June. We may not think it's good now, but at least if you could email them to us, that would be appreciated.
I'd be happy to.
Okay, any other questions on the budget? Oh, Board Member Creel.
To what extent are principals held accountable for their SACs? Not the action of the SAC, but whether or not there is an active SAC, whether or not they have all the participants they need, you know, community, teacher, otherwise.
Deputy Superintendent Sink is ready to answer that question.
Members of the board, Mr. Carrillo, they absolutely are held accountable for holding SACs at least once a quarter. And part of the requirements, for instance, of the 90-day plan is to involve the SACs in building that plan. So they're involved even with the whole strategic plan of the school. So, and those plans are, we go over those plans every time we do walkthroughs. So yeah, they're an integral part of the school, but they're even more so important at time of budget because we want to have more input than just the school site. We want to have input with people, with parents, with businesses around the area. So yeah, and that's part of their evaluation as well.
Thank you. I think that part I knew. I'm curious more about the participation in the SAC. So I remember once I went to a SAC meeting at Santa Fe High, and there were 3 of us. So, and this was like several years ago, but so, I mean, for a SAC to be effective, like you said, you maybe, I don't know what the benchmark is for any given school, but maybe it's 3 from the community, 3 teachers, 3 parents, and then the principal. And so my concern is making sure that there's the full participation from all the different stakeholder areas.
Well, I agree with you. I can look into seeing how well they're participating with each school. I can't tell you a number right now, but most of the principals, when we discuss this, have a good participating group, you know, come in. But again, I think it does, as you say, vary by school. I think the elementaries are probably on the word amazing on how much participation they get, and then it probably gets smaller as you go up into the secondary. But let me do a little research on that with our principals, and I will find out for you.
I think we also might want to pursue maybe a simple survey.
Yeah.
And actually surveying SAC members about their participation or how they think it could improve. And because I hear varying things, I know Ms. Mayer and I have spoken about it, because they're just different levels of functionality.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality of it.
So I'm not asking for a report back. I'm not asking for a presentation. I'm not asking for anything. Just you can do it all internally, and I trust you. You know what's best. Okay? Just wanted you to know, no extra work on my behalf, or our behalf. All right.
Any other budget questions? Okay, I think we're ready for the next presentation.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. The last presentation of the evening actually ties to your first action item. And Ms. Christy Wagner-Yonda, I do this backwards every time. I have a learning disability for things like that, and I do that. I reverse it, I have it in my mind, I know what I'm supposed to say, and I twist it around. I'll try not to do that again. Our Chief Operations Officer, I'll just leave it at that, and Ms. Lisa Randall will be presenting on the clean energy revenue bonds. Solar project number 2, Camino High, Capitol High and Camino Real Elementary, or community school actually, right?
Good evening again, Vice President Cashman, Board Members, Superintendent Garcia. The lion's share of this evening's presentation will be done by Ms. Randall. She is our Energy and Water Conservation Coordinator, and really she has championed this work the first and the second time in collaboration with Mr. Grunler. But we're extremely excited about this project and look forward to presenting it to you this evening. Are we live or not live?
We are live.
So for the presentation, these are just the highlights. We'll be talking and introducing a couple of our project participants. We can't do these alternate funding projects without partners, and so we're very fortunate to have a couple here this evening. We'll do just a real high-level overview of our sustainability program. We're going to refresh our memories about our project to date, go over this evening's project and where we're at in the steps. We're quite a ways along in the process, and I think that you'll be excited to see the progress. Lisa, why don't you go ahead and go to the next slide and introduce the team.
Thank you, Christy. Good evening, Superintendent, Vice President Cashman, board members, cabinet, and audience. I'm excited tonight to bring another SERB project in front of you. I'd like to introduce you to 2 of our participants. Regina Wheeler is the CEO of SunPower by Positive Energy Solar, Santa Fe's first solar design and installation company, I believe, and just celebrated their 20-year anniversary here in our city and have offices all over the state. As well as Neil Skyver, who is the Senior Vice President at GK Baum & Company. I think this is Neil's first week being vertical with a detached retina, so we're very excited he can join us tonight. So thank you, Neil. And then you can see the other participants. This is indeed a team effort with a lot of expertise, including, of course, our Chief Operations Officer and her construction management team, Carl Grunler, Harold Trujillo, David Griego from New Mexico Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources Department, and Zach Dillenbach with the New Mexico Finance Authority. And all of those folks were participants in our first Clean Energy Revenue Bond project. So just a quick review of the sustainability program goals. Our efforts are centered around reducing energy, water, waste, and resource use, reducing utility expenditures that come out of the operational budget, as you know, only too well, redirect more of those fiscal resources to the classroom. Also to reduce the district's negative impact on the environment, reduce our negative footprint. We also seek to increase sustainable practices in the organization as a whole, with all departments, all stakeholders. And to model environmental stewardship and fiscal responsibility to our staff, our students, and our community. So on the right-hand side, you see where we have sites with solar installations presently, the years those installations were put in place. The green, of course, connotes the 2 installations that we're proposing tonight. We started in 2010 installing solar in Santa Fe Public Schools. In 2009, just to review funding sources, I think that's important for the community and for all of us to review how we pay for these things. In 2009, we had an energy conservation package that was quite broad, and we used $237,555 for solar. That was at Amy Beal, our first large installation. In 2013 general obligation bond, we earmarked $1.96 million for solar projects. That has been expended. In 2014, we were lucky enough to receive capital outlay general appropriations monies from Senator Worth and Representative Egolf for the Atalaya and Acequia Madre solar projects, $100,000 for each project. Those are built, of course, and operating and generating. In 2016, we initiated our first clean energy revenue bond, and that was a $2.9 million project. that money has been expended, and those projects are, of course, installed and generating clean green power at Santa Fe High and Ramirez Thomas Elementary. In 2017, we earmarked another fund for solar in the general obligation bond, and that was $2 million. We're just beginning to expend that. And then we're here tonight asking for another authorization to borrow $1 million for 2 more installations, one at Capitol High and one at El Camino Real Academy. And I think it's important that we, so we have money in the general obligation bond to build, why don't we just build? And I think when you look at the amount that we've either earmarked or expended from our general obligation bonds, that totals almost $4.2 million. And when you look at the SERB solar funding, the first project and the project tonight, that equals $3.9 million. So we've been able to almost double our solar capacity and our solar generation by using this very unique model to continue to expand our solar capacity. So we're really kind of doubling our general obligation bond dollars and fulfilling the commitment to our community to build our renewable energy portfolio. So just a refresher on our first project, the enabling legislation to allow us to do this is the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Bonding Act. It creates the framework to allow energy efficiency and renewable energy projects to be able to cover the cost of the financing through the savings that they realize. And we call that clean energy revenue bonds. For SERB number 1, we assembled a strategy team in 2014. Can you believe it's been that long? In the fall of 2016, we completed the nearly 1 megawatt, first of its kind on public school property, 2-campus, 5-array SERB-funded solar project. It was a 2-year project in the making, and really, I think, a tremendous success. The arrays from SERB 1 power at Santa Fe High. They power the Commons, Toby Roybal Gym, the Performing Arts building, the Business Center, the Science building, as well as the Eco Campus, the Facilities and Maintenance building, Chaparral Elementary, and Ramirez Thomas. So because of the way those are all kind of intertwined through P&M and the power that they receive and the way that's set up, those arrays actually power about 65% of the electrical demand of all of those campuses. And we borrowed almost $3 million to do that through a 25-year loan process. Those SunPower panels that are there in place have a 25-year warranty on both product and production, which is the life of the loan, and we felt that that was important. And we used the expertise and design and installation of local SunPower by Positive Energy Solar, and they also continue to do the O&M on those projects. So it was a local company that did the work and continues the upkeep of the work. And then these are 3 of the arrays we actually built through the first SERB project. That's one of the arrays at the top of the hill along Siringo at Santa Fe High. We did not plant those wildflowers. That was just nature doing her thing. And then the upper right is the second largest array at Santa Fe High behind Ivan Head. And then that is the carport at Ramirez Thomas Elementary. Totaling 971, almost a megawatt of clean green energy, paying for itself. So SERB by the numbers, right? This is what New Mexico Energy and Minerals certifies. This is certainly what Carl wants to see, certainly what all of you want to see. Did this project do what we said it was going to do? Is it paying for itself in the way that we said it would? And we see with those actuals to target percentages, yes, indeed, it did. It is generating a little more than we expected it to. The utility savings are slightly smaller, and that's because of our peak power demand. We can't control the weather in our cloudy days. Our REC savings are what we expected, a little more actually, and that's a renewable energy credit. That's something that's in place for every kilowatt hour that you generate. We receive 2 cents back from P&M. Our total savings year 1, the actual total savings were a little over $200,000. Our target was $201,000. But remember, we built in a 10% cushion into this project. So we have an expectation of savings. That's 90% of the savings are used to pay back the loan. That 10% cushion, if it's unused, simply stays in the operational budget to fund whatever it is that needs to be offset with the solar savings. And so our debt service, which was covered by the savings year one, was $167,591. And so the net savings, what the district just got to keep in the operational budget, was a little over $32,000, which is lovely. So here we are to propose to you another CERB, Clean Energy Revenue Bond, number 2. The components of this project are 2 array sites. It's a combined 407 kilowatts. 2 sites, the first, Capitol High. It's a ground-mounted site. We'll show you some pictures of what it will look like in just a sec. It's a ground-mounted 339 kilowatt array, and it will be sitting adjacent to the existing array that's there now. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see that. It kind of sits back. You can see it from the second floor on the east end if you happen to be at the school. And if you ever want to take a walk out there, I'm happy to take you out. And then the second array is at El Camino Real, which you know already has an existing carport that was opened with the opening of the school. And so we will build an identical carport that will sit just west of it. They will look just the same, like they'd always been there together. It'll just be a little bit smaller. The project financing need this time is a little under $1 million, $998,426. SFPS will be making a contribution, and we're doing that because it allows us to kind of stretch the financing dollar and allows us to build a carport, which is a little more expensive than a ground-mounted array because you've got all the structural steel, etc. But a carport has a lot of benefits that a ground mount doesn't. And so we feel like it's important to do both when we can. And I want to emphasize again that the annual utility savings repay the debt service through the New Mexico Finance Authority. PED does a withholding of the SEG, and we realize those savings that they withhold by the amount we don't have to pay PNM. So it's a trade-off that actually, nothing actually trades hands or changes hands. But as you saw on the previous slide, those numbers do work. Again, this is certified by New Mexico Energy and Minerals Natural Resources Department. We have to have their approval before we can move forward. So at Capitol High, the existing array is right here. And then the proposed array is here in red. And we had our community meeting a couple weeks ago. No one came, but we were there and very excited. And this is the second site at El Camino Real Academy, and you'll see the existing solar array is here, the existing carport, and the proposed carport will sit right here to the west of it. Oh, I believe I turned it off. Am I good? Yep, thank you. And so CERB number 2 by the numbers, Capitol High will be about 340 kilowatts, El Camino 68. You can see the cost of both systems there. As you might have noted in the paper, the president did support a trade case tariff that had a $23,751 impact to the bottom line, but we had already assumed the highest tariff impact, and that is not something that he supported, so we were happy with those reduced numbers. The total cost of the projects, the annual savings are in the far right column. Those annual savings are what will pay the debt service for the next 25 years. And SFPS cost in the next to the bottom line, that's what we'll contribute through the General Obligation Bond Solar Fund, which is what it was meant for. And the bottom line is what we'll be asking you to approve for us to request from New Mexico Finance Authority. The items here in green, I won't read them all, but that is, those are the steps that we have completed thus far. We are in process of obtaining PNM approval. PNM allows you 1 year to construct after they've approved a project. So we didn't want to ask for their approval until we had your approval so that we didn't start that 1 year time clock ticking. We do expect their approval. I think we work really well with P&M and our solar projects. We will present this to the New Mexico Board of Finance on March 23rd, should you agree tonight to support the project. We also have to present it to the Public Education Department. The Energy and Minerals Department will present it to the Public Schools Capital Outlay Council, and we present it to the PSFA. In April, you'll see a resolution, and then an intercept agreement like you did last time. And if all goes well and it's something you choose to support tonight, we will issue a notice to proceed to Positive Energy Solar, hopefully in May, with project completion in 2018. So board action tonight is the approval of both the projects at Capitol High and El Camino Real Academy, as well as the authorization to request to borrow the $998,426.75 from the New Mexico Finance Authority. Again, that's through the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Bonding Act. And we expect to be able to be on the March 23rd NMFA meeting. So next steps, secure P&M approval, submit the projects as I outlined just a minute ago, return to you with the NMFA resolution, begin construction in May, and sing and celebrate and dance in September when the project is completed and Santa Fe Public Schools will be 20% solar powered instead of 15. And so these are the two existing projects at the sites that we're discussing tonight. The carport at El Camino Real Academy, always the first parking spots taken are under these. And then this is a Capitol High class outside of their solar array that exists there now. And thank you, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. And I just want to make a comment. We appreciate everything you do. I'd like to say everything your team does, but you tend to be a one-man shop. But I also want to say, and I'm sure many of us in the community have received emails on the bill that's before the legislature on limiting the amount of admin costs to each school district. And this is one thing we couldn't do without admin. There's nobody else, if we didn't have an admin staff, we couldn't expect our school sites to do it. So if you're contemplating that you think admin money goes to, I don't know, high-paid executives, this is what it goes to. And I don't know about how my other school board members feel, but I feel that you as a community elect us to serve, and if we're not using your money wisely, you're going to tell us thanks but no thanks, you're out the door. And so for us to, I mean, we feel, I think some of my board members definitely feel this is definitely an overstep to be having this in front of the legislature. This should be something that's local control. We best know how to do it. I'm sure a lot of other school districts would love to have somebody like Lisa Randall on their staff and be saving their operational funds each and every day so we can put more dollars into our classrooms. So I spoke a little bit longer, but does anybody else have any questions? Board Member Secretary Noble.
I just want to say thank you. This is very exciting, and I'm blown away at how accurate your numbers are thus far. Those are really, really impressive.
Thank you. You're welcome, and all credit to these folks right here as well.
Board Member Garcia.
Lisa, you remember when you first started this? It was already 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Seemed like it was just yesterday, but congratulations on you and your team and your enthusiasm that you have on this.
Thank you,
I heard
sir.
you on the radio a couple of weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
And also, can you tell us the educational point that the kids get from this solar array project? Do you guys actually take them out there, obviously, and do you explain to them how it works, how much savings they're doing, just in a nutshell?
Yeah, absolutely. All of our solar arrays are attached to web-enabled real-time monitoring. So any community member, board member, student, staff member who's interested in the generation of the arrays, that's all available through links on our website. under departments, SFPS Green, Sustainability. And we also will bring speakers or information to any staff member that requests that. We don't have any direct curriculum requirements, certainly, but we're very open to bringing any kind of information that's helpful to the staff member and the students. We have supported the creation of our sustainability program specialist position. We're currently reviewing applications for that, and I think that will open up a whole new window in terms of integrating some of this information into our STEM classes and environmental education classes and any classes who are interested.
And there's one other question. Did we think about carports for Capitol High instead of the solar array field?
Yeah, I think we would love to put carports as our main vehicle for solar generation. They tend to be about twice as expensive. And so we do the ground-mounted to be able to generate enough savings to support the added cost of the carports. I wish we could do carports everywhere. Santa Fe High parking lot is another wonderful parking lot, but we're just getting started, so.
Student Board Member Rodriguez. Sorry.
I would like to speak on behalf of educating students. I'm actually in this picture. That was freshman year in my AVID class. And she actually gave us a tour of the arrays, and I thought that was phenomenal because I never seen them before. And when she took us out there, I was just like, whoa, like, I can't believe I walk past this every day and I never see it. So now when I walk past there, I just stare at them, and there's going to be more, which is great. But yeah, definitely take some students out there and show them what you guys are doing and how energy is being produced within the school. I think it's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say, you know, that kudos, you know, to you and Christy and the team. It makes me so proud of our school district because we are, you know, truly way ahead of the game. And your leadership and vision and persistence and advocacy for a greener earth and a better future for everyone is really, truly legacy work. And just couldn't be prouder. So thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, Superintendent.
Board Member Garcia.
I'd just like to make a motion. Oh, sorry.
So, yeah.
That's so exciting. That's so exciting.
Okay, so can we move to action items, Superintendent? Thank you.
That was so good. There you go.
Okay, so.
Do you want me to list the issue, or you want him
No,
just to?
so we're ready to move to action item number 1?
I do.
Oh. And so Board Member Garcia, now's your chance.
I'd just like to make a motion for approval of the Capitol High and El Camino Royale Academy solar projects, and also request to borrow $998,000 for $126.75 from the New Mexico Finance Authority.
Okay, do I have a second? Secretary Noble, okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, Lisa, in your, one of those slides, it said that sometime in March you're going back to the Finance Authority, that we're authorizing you to ask for the money tonight, but this also says, and the request in the motion. So does this mean we don't have to have a separate thing in March, right?
The March meeting is at the New Mexico Finance Authority where we officially request the money.
Okay, so there needs to be the 2 steps. Okay, that's fine, I'm just curious. All right.
But you're approving our.
Authorizing, yeah, that's all good.
Okay, any more questions before we vote? So can everyone in favor?
Aye.
There are no opposed. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, thanks for all the great work.
Okay, action item number B.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight, we're bringing you first reading of Policy 302, attendance by non-resident students, open enrollment. A lot of these are just technical, right, to address the changes that have been made over the last several board meetings around attendance and boundaries and whatnot. So, Ms. Sullivan, would you go over this, please?
Yes, Vice President Cashman, board members, student board member, and Superintendent Garcia. The first policy we ask you to approve for first reading is 302, It's titled Attendance by Non-Resident Students and Open Enrollment. Besides the technical cleanup, we took out the No Child Left Behind reference to a school that needs improvement, and that's under enrollment priorities at the bottom of page 1. And we replaced it with current state law, which lists as an enrollment priority students enrolled in a school rated as F for 2 of the prior 4 years.
So the changes are there for you in red?
I'll move for approval on action item B.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, are we ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So it's unanimous.
Thank you, Madam President. The next item is first reading of Policy 303, Attendance Areas. The first reading of the amendment is to align attendance area terminology to state law to articulate a secondary boundary with transportation and to aim for attendance area decisions by the end of January.
Vice President Cashman, board members, and Superintendent Garcia, that's exactly what these amendments would do. I stand for questions.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay.
Thank you, members of the board, President Cashman. The first reading of Policy 333, Transportation. This first reading of amendments is to provide for transportation for students attending schools in a secondary attendance area. And do you have any questions?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It passes.
Thank you.
And before you go on, I think we're just passing these very quickly because we've all read these ahead of time. So I don't want people to think, oh, we must have a, big appointment someplace. It's just that we've already read these.
And most of the language is fairly simple, and there are on the website with our packet of materials. The last one, I do want to point something out to you from the time that you had board review. This one is Policy 627, Mandela International Magnet School Admission Policy. The first reading of amendments is to update the lottery and transfer process and to state the Mandela International Magnet School and International Baccalaureate program requirements. Obviously, we post all the board materials Friday evening, Monday morning. As people paid attention to this, we got some feedback about the language to not allow siblings or not to give preference to siblings. And so, we do have an alternate proposal if that is the pleasure of the board, or you can leave it as is. But we did want to let you know that we did receive some opposition to eliminating the preference for siblings.
What was that opposite, Superintendent? Was that a large amount of opposition?
About what we heard from a couple of families?
About a couple, a few.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Yeah. Yes, motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any discussion? As I've said at the last board meeting, I'm glad that we're not giving a preference to siblings since this is a lottery process. Then it makes it fair to everyone, so I'm glad to see the change. Okay, could I have a vote on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So it passes.
And
now
that we're done with action
Okay,
items.
thank you. Secretary Noble?
My apologies. I had some misunderstanding about scheduling tonight, so I have to go at this point, but I hope to see you all at the Bond Watch party shortly.
Well, one of my board discussion items is specifically about you. No, it's not.
Can we talk about it later?
Oh, good night. We'll see you later.
I'll see you later. Oh. We have some poll results. Do you want to hear the first ones from the El Camino? 97 yes, 48 no. Right now, it's a 66.9% to 33.1.
Usually that's.
First poll result.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
That's usually the trend.
Okay, so now we're on to board discussion and possible action. And the one item that we have is from Board Member Carrillo on the state education budget, so.
So I know that everyone over in the Roundhouse is patting themselves on the back because they're, after 4 years, giving people a 2.5 or 2% increase. Bravo for being so incredibly mediocre in your legislative responsibilities to fund education. But, and my big concern about that and is these are not one-time expenses, these are recurring. So my concern is that, yes, absolutely, we're going to give the raises necessary, and we would if we always do when we have the money. But is the state going to give us the money in a recurring fashion? Because then what happens is, and I'm not saying we don't want it, but they're not a very forward-thinking group. And so what happens then is that we've now increased the budget for personnel, right? But we don't know that they're going to maintain what they're giving us next year. And if they don't, we could very well then have to dip into operational funds or whatever it might be, whatever it might be. So that's why I brought that up, because I'm always very concerned about the lack of a strategic plan for education coming out of PED and the lack of, thinking decades down the line relative to our legislators. So are there any guarantees? Has anybody said anything about, yes, we have to increase the budget and hold this part harmless? That's why over the last several years, I'd say 6 years of my 7, and even at the School Boards Association, I've always pushed for legislation that holds education harmless from cuts, so that we never, it's like if somebody is, buying financial investments for the future or whatever, they're always going to have a floor. No matter what happens, they know that, something can't go down. And we don't know that. So I'm wondering if there's been any discussion about that in the House or the Senate.
I'm not aware of any discussion of that matter, Board Member Carrillo, members of the board, President Cashman. What is, typically, once the SCG is set, usually that becomes the new base. But as we all experience, and I'm sure, I can't say I'm reading your mind, but I think what you're referring to, so we have like the gas and oil dip, right? Then here we go. We don't know where we stand. The other is that they can hold maybe a certain area and say, all right, we're going to keep the salaries, but if other costs go up and they don't keep up with that, it's by de facto a cut. And so I have not heard anyone make any kind of commitment. It used to be once upon a time where more than half of the state budget went to education, and there was a kind of an unspoken rule that at least 52% was going to education. Those days are far gone.
It's like 44 now, right?
It's 46, 47, around there? I think it's 44. I mean,
yeah,
this is from 51% where we used to be.
So I'm noticing in our New Mexico School Boards Association agenda, we will have the opportunity, well, let's see, there's the there's our executive board for that group, and as well as Secretary-designate Chris Rozovsky is sitting on that panel. So this will be an opportunity to put him in the hot seat and say, look, you're giving this to us this year, don't take it away next year. And I would encourage our group to do so.
And I would share your concerns about that, because I did hear something, I can't remember, I read something, that one of the legislatures did say, well, maybe in another lean year we'll have to revisit it. And so I share your concerns that the minute you make a salary increase, people don't expect it to be taken away. They expect that's the base that they continue to build on and do their future planning. So I do share your concerns that we need to be making sure this is a permanent part of the education budget, not just something that goes up and down based on the economy.
And the only way to do that, honestly, is a hold harmless act. It's the only way to do that. Otherwise, you're just going to mess with our numbers when in the southeastern part of the state they don't have the revenues they want. So there's two more items I have.
Okay.
Unless somebody else wants to comment on that. Okay. HB 23. Now this is, I can't remember his name. You might have, the gentleman who brought forth the bill that in order, that part of the graduation requirement for a senior is they have to have a plan. They've got to have applied to a college and been accepted. They have to have this and this and this in place. And so I'm thinking it should just be called the New Mexico Government Intrusion to Families Talking About Their Kids' Future Act. It's like, for God's sakes, man, this is what parents do with their kids. It's not what legislators do with kids. And I'm vehemently opposed to stuff like that. You know, it's just, this, I don't know. I think this person did not really discuss this with other families with seniors. And he also didn't discuss it with districts because there's a massive expense to this. You're going to have a whole bunch more guidance counselors if you're now insisting that every senior has to craft a plan, right?
Right, and you know, the kids right now have to do a next steps plan when they enter in 9th grade. And I get the idea of kids having goals. What concerns me is that some students who may not have family guidance and maybe don't want to go to college think they have to apply to the military. And, you know, I mean, that I think is an unintended consequence. I said conceptually, I think that was my quote in the paper, conceptually, I mean, I get it, kids have goals, do better, but there's a lot of detail that needs to be worked out. And if a student doesn't do it, are we really going to hold them back from graduating? I mean, there's just a lot of, there's a lot of devil in that detail there.
And I hear what you're saying, but I wouldn't agree completely because I think that still, this is no place for government.
Well, my sensing from what I'm reading is it's not going to pass, but I agree it would become an unfunded mandate on us because we need to have counselors, and right now we have problems having enough counselors. So
it's a short session, so he'll probably bring it back next year.
All right.
He's testing the waters. The other thing is, and I know that our HR department is stressed. But I would like to know, and I mentioned this several meetings ago, what is our projection of vacancies? What are we doing to fill those vacancies? What job fairs are we part of? I'm just really concerned, because now it's February, and I'm just concerned, as I always am, you know, about...
I thought we brought that to you. Didn't we bring that? We did bring you that information, and we showed you. There was a little
the projected vacancies.
A mini presentation, yes.
I'll go back and look. I'm sorry.
But if not, I can provide you that information.
No additional work. No. Let me go back and look first, and maybe I missed it or forgot. You know, as I get older.
Or we may have just projected it, not given you a handout, though.
Okay.
We gave you both, yeah.
All right, then I'm somehow just...
I'd like to dovetail on that. The one thing I know that I asked for, are we, you know, reaching out with a letter to, at least for our folks in our New Mexico colleges, hi, we know you're graduating this year. We'd love to have you join the Santa Fe team and to try to, so if you could just come back and brief us on whether that's impossible to do or we are doing it, because I know if I got a letter like that, I'd be thinking, oh, somebody wants me. I'm going to, you know, think about it.
Mr. Bernardino, did you want to respond to that now, or you want to wait till next time? It's up to you. If you would like to respond, please.
We didn't mean to put you on the hot seat there.
Good evening, Board President Cashman, Superintendent Garcia, and board members.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. As a matter of procedure, we can't fully discuss this right now because it wasn't on board discussion as an item. We can have it there next week, and I'm not asking that it be there, because if I missed it somehow or misplaced my notes, I'll go back and look, so you don't have to waste your time.
Okay.
But it's not, right.
So if you
follow
could
up.
follow
We'll
up
follow
on us.
up.
Thank you, Elias,
And, you
for-
know, and it might be just a follow-up with an email or something to
Right,
the
or I
board
could put it in
members.
my update next
Oh,
time.
yeah, or your update. Thank you. Okay, anything else before we go on to advanced planning? Okay, so advanced planning, I would like to make one change to the calendar, which you put down on March 1st. Superintendent, an executive session for a superintendent evaluation, and just put that down as tentative, March 1st.
By the way, I did hear from the board counsel. He's available for both dates.
Okay, so we would like to put down on advanced planning, so we don't have to put it tentative, but March 1st, executive session, and it will be superintendent evaluation.
And then we
5 to
also, just so you know, we need to change citizens review, I believe, to the 28th, correct? The 21st, I'm sorry.
Any other changes to, okay, and I would remind board members that we have the New Mexico School Board Association Institute starting on Thursday through Saturday, so it's a good time to attend and meet with your other board members. And before I adjourn, I would like to thank everyone that went out to vote on the SB 9 issue for both us and also for the Santa Fe Community College, and I am positive this community will again strongly support the school system, so I'd like to just say thank you. And anything else before we adjourn? Okay, meeting's adjourned.